Now, this is an Old Testament concept married to a New Testament Jesus. And what I mean by that is, look at Isaiah 1:17. This is the last place I'll take you. It's a good spot to land textually. But look at Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. God's command to Israel is quite simple. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. It's the gospel in a nutshell. Notice that this has nothing to do with heaven and hell. By the way, let me read it again. There's no heaven in here, there's no hell in here, there's no demons, there's no angels. There's no prosperity. There's no favor and grace. There's action on our part. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Jesus is not reaching forward into a never-before-seen world before he goes to the cross to tell us how to live. He's reaching backwards. He's reaching backwards into the prophet Isaiah to go, here's what my dad, the dad I've been trying to show you my entire ministry, here's what my dad wants you to do. He wants you to learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. He pulls that from the past and he puts it right out in front of his disciples. And he goes, when you do it to them, you do it to me. You want to know what dad looks like? Look at Jesus. You want to know what Jesus looks like? Look at those in need. Look at those hurting. Look at those hoping. And that was Jesus not just plugging the fatal flaw, that was Jesus turning the whole system on its head. Going, the way to get to the Father now is not through sequestering yourself off, becoming a monk on a mountain somewhere so that it's just you and Jesus. The way to see God now is through the eyes of His creation, the very ones He died to save. And in that you encounter God every time you love your neighbor. And we've always struggled with this. They struggled with it in their day. Jesus told them to do it. The guy raised his hand and goes, who's my neighbor? Because that's exactly what we want to know. Who's my neighbor is always us asking who we don't have to love. That's all that question means. Who do I not have to care for? That's all I really want to know. Don't tell me who I got to care for. Tell me who I can get by with not caring for. Who's on the naughty list? Who doesn't qualify? Because those are the ones I'm going to have a lot more trouble loving. If I can skirt that and just love these other people that are pretty good to me. And Jesus shot a hole in that and goes, when you throw a party, don't invite the people that you know, invite the people that you don't know. He goes, because if you only hang out with the people that like you, what good is that? That's a Jesus that's not as easy to follow. That's a Jesus that's showing you how to encounter God through your neighbor, showing you how to love them, how to see them. So when you see the image of those, you see the image of God. Here's what I mean by that. The Hebrew word for image is Tselem, T-S-E-L-E-M. And Tselem really, in the old Hebrew, had to do with idols and statues. In fact, it's the word that is used when God says, make unto yourselves no graven image. Did you know that God uses the same word right there as He used in Genesis when He said, let us create man in our own image. And so God takes His own image and puts it into Adam and Eve. And in that, then when you get to the law, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt make unto thyself no graven image. Same Hebrew word. God goes, don't fashion an image. Why? Well, there's two basic reasons. Rabbinical tradition would teach us this. We can learn this from the Jewish community. Number one is you can't fashion anything because it's going to be inferior to God. God's better than whatever you can come up with. But number two, God already has an image fashioned, and it's you. So to create a graven image is to present something to God of less quality than God has created in the offerer. That no matter how beautiful, no matter how pretty you can sculpt it, it's not as great as the sculptor. That you would be giving God an inferior version by sliding an idol out there than you would by just sliding yourself out there. Paul caught that in Romans 12 and says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice unto the Lord, wholly acceptable, which is your reasonable service. Why a living sacrifice? Because you can't fashion anything as great as you. Yeah, and what they meant by that was that you can't come up with anything to God that's as beautiful as His own children. Like, Mommy, here's my picture. Will you put it on the fridge? Sure, I will. It doesn't matter how terrible it is and geometrically unsound. And no, tigers can't be that color and none of them fly. But we're going to put it on the refrigerator anyhow because you made it, but it can't possibly replace you. In fact, it's only pretty because it's you. There's a reason we would never hang this flying tiger in the art museum, because it's terrible art. But not to mom, not because they're so good at it. In fact, you don't bring your friends over and go, hey guys, come here in the kitchen, I want to show you this. Look what Sally painted for me at school. You don't do that. And we walk right past other people's kids' art on their fridge, and we don't ask, wow, who drew that house? We don't, because we understand the reason it exists. So there's a little bit of that in that whole image of God issue, that what we present to him is never going to be what we are. And the only way anything could be acceptable to God is because of the offerer, because of the image. But the thought process was that idols, because Israel went through the land and they saw other countries, and other countries made little statues, little golden cows and little golden gods. And Israel was impressed because they got to touch the God. And so they asked God if they could do that. And of course God refused, but the first chance they had behind God's back, they made a golden calf at the foot of Mount Sinai. You know that story.